Ryan said, my name is Lyle Barnett from a very, very small town in central North Carolina called Robbins. I'm 29 years old. The picture behind me, we will get into here in a little bit. That is the helmet that I was wearing in the crash that Ryan was talking about. Growing up, I was a very fortunate kid. My dad has a very successful business back in North Carolina, and I was given everything I needed, and never went hungry, and it kind of gave me that I'm invincible attitude. I was big into sports. I played everything that the Parks and Recreation Department offered, and kind of dabbled in some motocross. Anything with 2 or 4 wheels was my jam for a while. I realized very early on that I didn't have, for lack of better terms, the cojones to race motocross. Something about leaving the ground on a 4-wheeler or a dirt bike and jumping hundreds of feet just didn't appeal to me. My best friend growing up, his dad was a very successful late model round track racer. That is what he went on to do. Was a 3-time in a row, back-to-back super late model truck champion at Hickory Motor Speedway there, which is kind of where the roots of NASCAR started. So that's kind of what I thought I wanted to do. Dad and I had decided we were going to go purchase a truck. I was 14 or 15 at the time. We were going to jump in and take our first at bat at round track racing. My dad did not know anything, nothing. He bracket raced as a drag racer through the 80s with my grandfather, and that's really where our roots were, but it wasn't something we had ever really done as a family or I'd ever been a part of. So I walk in from football practice, actually a football game on a Friday night. We just got our tails waxed, which was nothing new. And I dropped my duffel bag. I was probably the worst rated quarterback in the state at the time. I blame that partially on my offensive line, but I walked by my dad in his recliner, pissed off, and I'm a sore loser. I'm still that way today. My beautiful fiance's in the back there, and she can vouch for that. And he was like, hang on a second, what do you think about drag racing? And I'm like, this is really not the time for that. I knew the next morning we were going to buy a late model truck. And I said, whatever, man, it's fast, it's high horsepower, we've got the potential to go fast, whatever, cool, yeah, that's cool. So we go the next day and buy a drag car, and from that point forward, things happened and we went different directions, but it ended up putting me standing in front of you today. We started out bracket racing. I wasn't terrible, but we weren't great. We lucked up and won a few. We had a huge interest in small tire outlaw drag radio racing. Maybe the most popular classes, if any of you have ever heard of them, are X275, Radio versus the World. Anybody watch Street Outlaws on the Discovery Channel? Those guys came to South Georgia about 3 years ago and tried radio racing with us. And that was literally the Discovery Channel and Paramount who puts it on was kind of like, listen guys, if you guys keep racing with these boys, people are going to realize how slow you actually are. So you need to separate yourselves and go back to doing your street racing. That's a true story. So, like I said, at 15, my dad bought me a 2002 Camaro. It had a 468 cubic inch big block on it. Had a couple stages of nitrous, which we did not turn on because my fear levels in a car were nothing like they were on a 4-wheeler. I would drive anything at any speed at any time. So we bracket raced, like I said, for a while. Got into the small tire radio racing. We then started playing around with nitrous. We were really bad at tuning that. Our engine man loved us because he would fix it. We would go to the track, we would burn it up, and we brought it back so he could fix it the next week. But we learned a lot, and Dad and I have enjoyed it. He's my best friend and my crew chief, and it kind of transitioned into, this is around the time that we transitioned into the car that I had my crash in. I had made my way up through the ranks as I think anybody should. I didn't jump from running a 7-second 8th mile to a 4-second 8th mile. We kind of made our way up through the ranks, but we partnered up with a fellow not far from where I grew up, and we bought a 2001 C6 Corvette. Had a Hemi just like you see in the Top Fuel dragster in it, but it had twin turbos. On alcohol, full tilt, the thing made 4,500 horsepower or somewhere along those lines. Today it would run 360s or 370s in the 8th at 210 to 220, a 250 mile an hour capable quarter mile car. I was young, I was dumb, I was fearless, but you could not tell me anything. You know, I was at the pinnacle of radial tire drag racing. The next step was to move into the pro mod, and I'd been given this opportunity as a 24-year-old kid, you know, and that's something that not many, if any, will ever get to say. We built the car from the ground up. We bought it kind of all as pieces, but my dad, my team, everybody out of Mooresville, we put that car together. And in 8 months, we were racing locally, went to the final round, thought we had a hot rod that could compete. The very next week, we loaded up, we went to South Georgia Motorsports Park for Lights Out 6, or No Mercy 6. The biggest radial tire race that there is throughout the year. And it is a huge stage, thousands of people in attendance, tens of thousands watching online. It just doesn't get any bigger than that for us. We had been making qualifying runs through the day. Things were going really well, things were looking promising. The car was picking up in ET and mile per hour, and we rolled up for the first round of qualifying. I actually have a video that I'm going to show here in a little bit of the crash itself, but we had what we thought was our personal best ET tune-up loaded in it. Everybody felt confident that the car was going to do what it should do. And I rolled through the water box, did a burnout, backed up, Dad pulled me in the beams, and I proceeded to stage the car just like I would anything else. And if you ever watch a turbo car race, they spool up, bump in, they're popping and banging and doing all kinds of stuff. I let go of the button, and everything was good. Half track, the car felt strong. 3/4 track, the car felt strong, and things went south in a hurry. On these fuel-injected cars, if they're electronically fuel-injected, the higher horsepower stuff runs 2 sets of fuel injectors per cylinder, so we run 16 fuel injectors. If one of the two in any particular cylinder goes wrong, we call it lean and mean. You know what that means? You pull fuel out of the motor, that cylinder gets hot. Well, it lost one on number 8, which is the rear cylinder on the passenger side. And when it lost that injector, the other injector didn't know. So you drive them with 2 different boxes. When it drops one, it doesn't automatically drop the other. So the other one just kept on firing. It burnt between the head and the block, a billet block. It burned out of the back. It just happened to clip an oil passage when it came through. So it had 60 pounds of boost, 130 pounds of oil pressure, 150 pounds of fuel pressure, and on alcohol, it was a blowtorch. It blew the center portion of my firewall was carbon fiber. It blew through that like it wasn't even there and set the entire cockpit of the car on fire. I was running 180 at the time. I went through the lights at about 175, and the inside of the car was completely engulfed in flames. I bounced off of both walls and burnt for 28 seconds. I've got a couple pictures that some of these are graphic, but I debated on whether I was going to show them or not. But when it boils down to it, this is reality. You know, and this is what I went through, what she went through, what my dad went through, standing at the starting line watching his 24-year-old son bounce off of both walls on fire. The pants I was wearing, I'll get into what I was wearing and why the hands, feet, and face got burnt and nothing else. That was a very awful picture of the jacket. But this next picture is when I was taken out of the helicopter or the airplane and rolled into the burn center. Well, that's my glove, what's left. That's the interior of the car. Can't see that really well, but literally the stickers on the outside of the windshield are still there. All the stickers in the engine bay were still on the intake. The Peterson oil tank still had the Peterson sticker on it, but the inside of the car was completely gone. That is when we rolled into the burn center the night of the wreck. They transported me by ambulance from the track to the hospital, by airplane from hospital to burn center, and we were there for 2 months. One of the worst parts of my recovery was what I had inhaled, and I still deal with some of that today. But you think you shouldn't breathe, you shouldn't gasp, but if I come up to you right now and threw a bunch of hot air in your face, the first thing you do is take a deep breath, and you would think like, oh no, there's no way, but I did. And when I gasped for the breath, there was no oxygen there. The fire was eating it up. So then I kept gasping, and I knew I shouldn't, but there was nothing I could do. And for 28 seconds, that's what endured. The pictures that are here on the right are when I got to or when they found the lung damage. And at that point, they had a meeting with Melissa and my family and said, usually they don't come back from this. If he does, more than likely he'll spend the rest of his life on a ventilator, or we're just going to be touch and go to see what happens. And in 7 days, that's what we look like. Doctors and medical people really try to keep their religious faith out of this deal, but my pulmonologist there said that was nothing short of a miracle, and it was not in his hands. So, you know, whether you believe in it or not, you know, I know that I had somebody watching over me, and the good Lord left me here for a reason. And if it's here to talk to you guys today, then and I save one of you, then it's worth it. You know. So this was. I don't much remember this, but I was just dead set that my dad took a picture this day, and I kept swiping. I wanted him to send it and put it on Facebook, and he was like, "Listen, dude, let's back up just a little bit. Let's make sure we get you out of here first." Really, just through the process, as you know, the body's natural reaction to a burn is to swell tremendously. I was 2 to 3 times my body size. My chest was huge. You know, my arms and hands. Actually, cut the back of my hands to relieve some of the pressure and whatnot that was going on. This was just before they tried some stem cell, which is the next picture that I'll show. This looks like a terrible scab, and I guess really that's what the stem cell does, but they spread this stuff all over my face. And they were flying doctors in from the JMS burn centers around the country because they thought that this was going to be the deepest 3rd-degree burn they'd ever tried it on, and that it was going to work.
That's like a artificial skin.
No, the stem cell is, they pull it out of the placenta? Yeah. So when a woman...
Stem cell.
Stem cell stuff, yeah. Right.
Okay.
Now I had 17 or 18 grafting surgeries, and that included pig skin, cadaver skin, you know, donor skin, and then obviously my own, which came from my thighs, and face graft came from my head, and I've got pictures of that as well. But the stem cell didn't work in the center portion of my face. So it worked all down in the bottom of my chin, which is why I grew my trademark beard back, but in the center portion of my face, it just didn't quite get it done. The end of my nose was basically dead. So that's another, just before we went back for a face graft, and that is where they took my face graft from. So they shaved my head, take the skin above the hair follicle so that my hair grew back, but had enough skin to give me that guy right there. And that's permanent. That turned into what you're looking at right now. Now lots of laser treatments and lots of compression garments, and I wore a clear mask that looked like Derrick Rose that played for the Bulls there for a while. I wore it, you know, I had to wear it 23 hours a day. Compression garments everywhere else that got me.
Were your eyes in?
They weren't. So, and it was another one of the miraculous parts of my recovery, as they say, was I guess I got them shut in time.
Yeah.
However, it did melt my eyelids together. So, I should have put a picture of that, but I don't think I did. So they sewed my eyes together out here and left me that was what they called my peephole. And I was like that for a year, right? A year that's what I looked through, was those little peepholes. That was when I got home. That was a month or so after I got home. But yeah, so when they realized my eyelids weren't going to function or not do as they should, not close, which causes bacterial infections in your eyes and whatnot, they actually took skin off my neck, split my eyelid in half, added skin in there, sewed it, you know, top and bottom, both eyelids, put these big bolsters on there, and they made new eyelids, and they felt like that's what I've got. You know, amazing what they can do. You know? We have spent a lot of time there. I've done a lot with the burn unit, you know, and those people saved my life. You know, no doubt. They got me back together. You know, I mean, it burnt. So I was burnt 15%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I was burnt the worst 15% that you can get burnt. My hands, my feet, and my face. So the inhalation damage is what kept me in the intensive care unit for so long. It took a long time to get capacity back.
What's the temperature that you get? 2,000 plus. Probably.
1,500 is what they estimated, you know, is what it got to. That was just judging by what it did to the roll cage. You know, we had the chassis inspected to see if it could be recertified, you know, and the guy was like, man, it got, you know, it was well north of 1,500. Chromoly does weird things at the welds. He said, I would never certify this thing again. And I've still got it. You know, it's sitting out behind my shop getting rained on. I've had people offer to buy it, but I would never feel comfortable selling that to you and knowing that you go out there and wreck it and break apart and kill your, you know.
If somebody would buy it.
Right. Oh yeah. You know, grudge
Ignore
racing.
your funds.
Right. So I guess into the next. Well, actually, I'll show you the. Look at.
Both drivers moving in. Here we go. First qualifying section coming alive. Number 397 at 185 as Lyle Barnett's on fire. Everybody stay where you're at, please. Everybody stay where you're at. Lyle Barnett is on fire there. Please stay where you're at.
So it kind of leads me into the next part of you know why Ryan and the guys asked me to come today was I was wearing good stuff, what I thought was good. I had an Impact 15 suit on, which we had just upgraded just because we thought we should a couple months before this wreck. I was wearing Dash 5 stuff. I wore the same suit for 5 or 6 years probably, you know, something comfortable, had all the right holes in the right places, you know, and everything was comfortable and felt good. If you've ever worn Dash 20 stuff, especially the gloves, some of those things can be really bulky. And it was hard for me to adjust, but on this particular day, for whatever reason, I had on my good suit, I put on my thin gloves, I wanted to cut a good light. The guy was running right there. It was when we had just eclipsed the 3 seconds on, was one of my buddies. And even if he outran me, the last thing I wanted to do was let him leave the start line before I did. So I put on some thin gloves. They were Dash 5. I had on my 5 shoes. I had on a good helmet, no face mask or head sock, and my visor was up. It was nice and cool that night, fogged up, you know, and I left. I didn't do what I should have done, and the only part of my body that got burned is where I was not at the park. It burnt the gloves, you know, just clean off of me, burnt my shoes basically off of me, and burnt my face, you know, burnt it pretty bad. That night at the track, after I was gone, the manufacturer's Midway, there was a guy there selling good fire safety equipment, and he sold out of head socks that night. And that's good. You know, I'm glad that everybody took the initiative, everybody went and tried to upgrade their safety program, but at the same time, it shows how much of a reactive group we are. It took something bad happening to me for people to wake up and see that they need to take care of themselves and be sure that they're wearing what they should be wearing.
What's the date
On this accident, September the 24th of 2015. So 4.5 years ago. You know, it's all too often that you see, I'm sure how many of you in here are racers or drivers? All of you pretty much. How many of you are parent-kid combos? Right. So, you know, one of the hardest things for me to overcome, mentally at least, was knowing that a half a mile away, my dad is doing what this dude is doing right here, running down the racetrack after his son, who he thought at the time was dead. There was no doubt in his mind that I had been killed. And there was no doubt in my mind that I had been killed. You know, when I came over and hit this wall and the fuel cell exploded, there was no doubt.
No knives, right?
Yeah, I had on head.
You did?
Yeah.
You did.
I wear Simpsons hybrid.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But there was no doubt in my mind that I was dead. You know, and as those of you that are dads of racers, or those of you that are racers who have families at home, it's something that you got to think about. At the time, we didn't test like we raced. And what I mean by that is I would go to our little local track down the road, put on just whatever I had, you know, and we would go out there and make test hits. But when you test to race, you test to win, right? You know, and that mentality had to change. No ambulance, no EMS, no safety. Me, a couple of my guys from the shop, because we were a mile from the drag strip, the guy to run the tree, and that was it. And I was making rips right down that thing, just like we were trying to go just as fast there as we did at the racetrack. but the testing mentality was not the same as the racing mentality. And why is that? I can't answer it. I don't know. It's, right, I mean, it can happen anytime and it can happen to anybody. Bad things happen to good people every single day. And unfortunately for us, and unfortunately for a lot of the racing community, it took something bad happening to me and me getting burned up and spending time in the burn unit, and a year's worth of recovery and $2.5 million later in medical bills, for people to wake up. And it shouldn't be that way. You as racers, at a bare minimum, you should be setting an example for the next guy. And I tell the street outlaw guys this all the time. I'm friends with several of them. I've raced with Dave Comstock several times and helped him with his radio stuff. And when I first started helping him, I'm like, not until you do something about that suit you got on. I mean, I'm talking about ragged. The bottoms of it were chewed up where you've been walking on the holes in the knees and stuff, And I'm like, listen, man, there's kids all over the world watching you drive this car down the street with no gloves on. There's kids all over the world watching you drive down the street with some holy fire suit on, and if we're gonna if I'm gonna help you and you're gonna set an example, you're gonna set the right example, and as racers, it's something that you've got to remember, is that one, you're setting an example from somebody else, but two, if this would have been, maybe one of you guys or an older gentleman or something who didn't have the healthy lungs and in good shape like I did, he was going to leave a family of however many at home, and may not have made it out of that. And it's a mentality that I've vowed to change and that I've worked hard over the past 3.5 years since I've started speaking to groups like you about it. It's something that I've tried to change, and I hope that the more that I'm able to speak and the more that I'm able to talk to people like you guys that'll change. It's sad that we put a dollar value on our life. You'll go spend $1,000 or $2,000 for the next latest and greatest carburetor, or somebody's got some lightweight gear, or they've got this transmission's better than what I've got, or for you sprint car guys, maybe they've got some new badass wing, or something. You'll go spend thousands and thousands of dollars, but you'll complain at the manufacturer's midway to the reps at Simpson about a $400 or $500 helmet. Why is that? Why are we putting a dollar value on our life? I was like that. We bought in fact, the impact suit that I was wearing is used. We went and bought a second-hand, if you will, suit from a guy that had it and it didn't fit right. Now it was still a good suit, but I still didn't go spend fair market value money on a new suit. We found a good deal, but we're so quick to come in here to Lane, and go buy something right off the shelf for whatever it costs and walk right by the fire suits. I know there's several of you in here right now who are probably thinking like, he's kind of talking about me. You got a fire suit that just didn't quite want it up to snuff.
I resisted, I've been racing for a long time, I resisted buying a Honda bike. So every road race, I was up at Elkhorn, and the road racers, they came. It's a tricky corner, it's a dangerous point. So a friend of mine, Fiat 124, lost it, it came head on, wrecked his car, and smashed his nose on the inside of his nose. I thought, he had a Honda.
Right.
I'm thinking, without that, we
Right.
would have taken him to the hospital.
Right.
So guess what? I bought a Honda.
Right. And it's still that way today. There's only a handful of you in here today, but if there was several thousand of you in here today, there'd be several hundred out of those several thousand who are doing exactly what I'm talking about. They're skipping by on the safety stuff. They're going to these outlaw tracks or skipping by the safety tech or bringing a different helmet so that they can wear their own raggedy stuff or whatever. I mean, there's all different ways to get around it, but you got to quit putting a dollar value on your life. You got to be proactive. To prevent getting a speeding ticket, what do? You don't speed. To prevent getting burnt in a race car, you wear the right stuff. And
Did you lose consciousness?
No, I remember it all. And so the physical battles that I couldn't wipe. At 24 years old, my mother wiped my butt when I went to the bathroom. At 24 years old, my mom fed me. My fiance fed me. My fiance wiped my butt. I was 24 years old. I had to have somebody go to the bathroom with me. And so the physical battles, getting my hands, because these are 100% of your independence right here. If anything, go buy gloves. Because if you lose these, you've lost all of your independence. You cannot do anything for yourself. Trust me, no. You know, I dealt with it for 3 months. Yeah.
How do you maintain your suit for racing?
How do I
Do you
manage it?
just, after you wear it, do you just hang it up in your?
Then I wadded it up, shoved it in my bag, zipped it up, and threw it in the top of the hauler, you know, to keep it out of the way. And then we showed up to the racetrack. I pulled it out and, you know, gave it away, jerked it back on, and got back in the race car. Now, Simpson sells some suit wash and whatnot, and we wash. Well, she washes my suit, and we hang it up. You know, I take better care of it now than I did then. But yeah, before I just would wad it up, you know, and shove it in the trailer. And if it's the middle of July in BFE, South Carolina, which is the hottest place on earth, you know, those things are nasty and stinky. But no, I didn't take care of it. You know, I just pushed it to the side.
I went to the club's annual dinner in 2018, and they handed out a safety packet.
Right.
They talked about 5 years to replace the suit, and my suit was like 4 years. Again, at Elkhart, and said, 5 years.
Mhm.
So he hooked me up with a place and walked in and walked in that suit.
Yeah.
It's 90 days,
Oh,
absolutely 90 days. The whole suit weighs on,
Yeah.
it's bulky. Exactly.
oh,
Yeah, so hey, first of all, I saw you on Fastest Car.
yeah,
Thank you for coming here today,
Absolutely.
because this is an incredible story. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
yeah. So
I got a quick question. I race a different, I don't drive as a sports car racer, but did your car, did it have an onboard fire system, or were you even able to trigger it when all that happened?
it's a good question. I have since then teamed up with Fire Aid, who is here.
Okay.
Mikey Myers, I guess he's over there with the truck. You need to go by and talk to him before you leave. But I did. I had a Halon fire suppression system in the car, and it had the typical little red T pull
Yeah.
handle. Unfortunately, in my case, the fire it came through the firewall in a tube about that big around, and it went just right in the mouth of my helmet. So right then and there, it was just full freak out, you know, like.
Yeah.
And that's why I bounced off the walls and didn't hit the brakes. I mean, I was balled up in the seat, what I could get balled up. And I had a foreign poured seat and 6-point harness and window net and head and neck restraint on. So getting away from it really wasn't an option, but I was just trying to, you know, bat flames and swat away. Well, when I thought about it and reached up there, it had melted the handle off. So I couldn't pull the fire suppression anyway.
You think it would have made that much difference?
I don't think so because, the reason I say that is at speed, and those things aren't sealed up. Even worse in some of these, I'm guessing 99% of you guys are round track racers. Y'all's aren't sealed up at all. Windows are down or don't have windows at all. Or sprint cars don't have a windshield. You know, they're just open cockpits. And at speed, for me at 180, we think it would have just sucked it out of the car and not done a thing.
And I assume the motor did the engine explode and stop running? Did the pump stop running?
It didn't stop running right away, which was a problem.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
it's still
it
spraying
continued to run and continued. Now, obviously, when it blew out of the back like that, and I came out of the throttle, you know, the motor was winding down, but it was still in gear.
Right.
So it was still having. It was like, you know, like
Still
going
being pumped.
to fourth and dumping the clutch. You know, the motor is still wound up, so it was still pumping oil and fuel. And I guess it did that until it ran out of fuel. Honestly, I don't know. Because when the car actually came to what I thought was stopped, I just raked the door because it's got the release on the top, and I just bailed out. I didn't take a seatbelt off. I didn't take a Hon. It had melted all of that stuff off of it. My seatbelts were just a puddle of whatever that stuff's made of in the bottom of the seat. You know, that's all that was left. But the Halon deal, and it's something that we could go off down that rabbit hole too. The scary part about a Halon fire system to me is that it robs the oxygen out of the air. There's nothing, they do their job. I'm not saying they're a bad product by any means. I have since been sponsored and linked up with Fire Aid. It's a water-based chemical foam, and it does not rob the oxygen out of the air. And they now have what they call their auto sense block. We mounted mine on the transmission tunnel. The internal temperature of the car gets above 174, it automatically sets the system off. I think that Fire Aid would have prevented the majority of my injuries just because it is a liquid and a foam. It would stick as opposed to being just a gas and a haze, you know, and to be sucked out of the car. But there's really no way to do that. You know, there's no way. I don't want to go back and try again to see if we can fix the problem, you know, but Yes, we had a fire suppression system, but by the time I thought about pulling it, the handle was melted off and couldn't pull it. But part of it, it's like I was telling them at dinner last night. They were asking about, how the track handled it, and insurance, this, that, and the other. And it's why you sign a waiver when you come through the gate. You're signing away. In my opinion, you sign away the right to go after somebody else for your stupidity in some cases or whatever. We live in a world now where that's something that probably would happen today. Somebody would say that the track had inadequate safety equipment or whatever, but the safety staff at South Georgia Motorsports Park was on me before I stopped. At the end of the video, if we kept playing it, the truck actually comes by me and has to back up and track me as we're backing up. I got myself out, and in 12 and a half minutes, I was out the gate.
So they had guys in this.
Right, yeah, so this truck here was parked beside this one. There's a hole in the wall there where the first turnoff is, and they were out on the track, came to me, but I was still rolling, so they backed up and tracked me until I stopped, had the fire out. EMS is not far from coming into the frame here, and they had me out of the gate in 12 and a half minutes, an exceptional job. I mean, time is of the essence. Every second matters at that point. And they did a great job. But if I can leave you as a group with anything today, be sure that when you guys as racers are getting in your race cars and going out there on the track, no matter if you're testing, practicing, qualifying, racing, whatever you're doing, that you're wearing the right stuff. You guys in sprint cars, I know you guys y'all run alcohol again, right? Most of you. That is some violent stuff. I mean, it's all any combustible fuel is violent, right? But I'm not sure what you guys are required to wear. If it's anything like the series and stuff that I run, they don't really care as long as you've got something on, But like I said a few minutes ago, every second matters. I was what they estimated somewhere between 2 and 7 seconds from 75+% of my body burnt. And had that happen, arguably it may not be here today.
The suits are good for 30 seconds.
It all depends. Like a 5 is only good for, is there somebody here that knows the exact numbers? 5 is good for like 10 seconds or something, and 15 is 20 maybe, or 25. And
It varies with the temperature.
Right, yeah. Yes, sir.
I think a 5 is you have 7 seconds until you will start to suffer second-degree burns, I think is the criteria for that.
So I actually, those of you that were familiar with the situation Impact, several years ago got in some trouble for Chinese SFI tags, and they got caught. They got their SFI certification jerked, and to get their certification back, they actually were making suits with an extra layer, or they were trying to show that they were serious about being for real, and whatnot. And I just so happened to have one of those extra layer suits on, and I sent the suit. I actually sent it to Simpson, everything I was wearing, and they drilled the helmet and tested all of it, and they said that we were somewhere between 2 and 7 seconds from some good second-degree burn, or plus. So now obviously I've teamed up with Stand 21, if you're familiar with that brand, and I wear one of their 20 suits now, and I joke around. I drive a bracket car every now and again just to have something local to play with, and I'm probably the only bracket racer out there that can climb in either that or a Top Fuel funny car if I wanted to, but I've had about with the fire.
I occasionally go up to Great Lakes, the bracket races that just let home.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we call it grudge racing. It's, in North and South, in the Southeast, it's huge. It's, you and your buddies have built something in your backyard, and you show up to some podunk racetrack in the middle of nowhere and race for thousands of dollars, one run. And I see guys get in there in tennis shoes, blue jeans, a Jegs, one, little bullshit racing jacket, and a dirt bike on, and tear off down there, run bottom 4 second 8 mile times, and not me, not anymore. Now I used to be like that. At 18 years old, I drove for a pretty sketchy grudge car, and for me, it was just to be on that stage and to be a part of that deal, and I was wearing just the bare minimum, because grudge cars, there is no minimum weight, so you got to be light, right? So I wore my light stuff, and
You still race that?
I do, yeah. I actually, at the end of this, the very same racetrack, my first race back, what is this?
The boats go down, and this will be an emotional one if Lyle Barnett and the Tooth Jerker can get down ahead of John McDonough. The all-conquering Lee Sprint car has one more job to do, and McDonough being reset.
At this time, we would just, for like the fourth or fifth time in a couple weeks, we would reset the Lee Spring world record. And we still hold the mile per hour record today. And we've since lost our EQ record.
John McDonough smokes the tires, ladies and gentlemen. Lyle Barnett, your first champion at Lights.
So the first race back, at the same track that I wrecked at, and we reset the Lee Spring world record, qualified number one.
Congratulations, man. That is so awesome.
You really couldn't write the story any better, and in our opinion.
Jason Digby, you like. Peter Harrell, you rock. That whole team, baby. Thank you, Lyle Barnett, man. One hell of a driver, and he takes it home.
We're here at Lights Out 8. Very emotional moment down here at the top end. Lyle Barnett, after your horrendous fire at No Mercy 6, you've made a comeback, and you've not only made a comeback, but you have dominated the Leaf Spring class here. Is there anybody you want to thank?
I'll start with the good Lord, man. I almost died here. To come back like this is cool, It's something we've been working hard for, and Jason Digby's poured a lot of time, effort, and money into this thing, and it's a hell of a hot rod, but Pete Harrell, Jeff Burns, Eric Yost, Greg Slack, Dave at Proformance. I'm gonna forget somebody, but damn, dude. Damn, that's it. You did it.
I've told my story several different ways, and I told Ryan and the guys that did it last night that there's several different ways that you can tell it. I've spoken to kids struggling with either physical changes that struggle with, going back out in public, this, that, and the other. And I've spoken strictly about fire safety, and when Ryan asked me to come and tell it, I told him, I said, I just want to cover it all. Part of the roughest part of my recovery by far was the mental side. I told him last night that I didn't joke, but I didn't really think that PTSD was not that it wasn't a real thing, but that it was something easy to overcome. It's absolutely not. The picture of the little dog that right before this race video started is my service dog. We didn't bring her because we have since acquired a 90-pound chocolate lab, and he's grown up from 6 weeks old to this monstrosity that he is now and doesn't do too well when we separate him. So I didn't bring her with me today, but she was by far the best thing for me. I did all the medication stuff, and you're either a zombie or a basket case, and so we steered away from that and just tried to do it naturally and got the dog, and that was all was a good part of my recovery. But by far the best thing for me was when I went back to Darlington Dragway in South Carolina and climbed back in that hot rod. I'm a firm believer in if the horse bucks you off, you got to get the hell back on it. At least once. Don't you can't live the rest of your life in fear of something like that, I don't think. I went back to the same racetrack 5 months after my wreck, all bandaged up and stuff, but to thank the racing community for what they did for me. You guys know that the racing community is one of the best families you could ever be a part of. Financially, definitely, but just the support that they gave me from all around the world. You know, we had at the burn center that when we left there, I think we had 2 or 3 of the big boxes of printer paper. Like you go get it at Staples or whatever, full of cards and letters and stuff. You know, and it's just an awesome family to be a part of. And I decided at that race that there was no doubt in my mind that I needed to at least try again. You know, and a year, it was just over a year. It was October of 16. I wrecked in September of 15 when I got back in that car right there. The guy that I'm hugging there owns the car. He's a dentist out of Mississippi. And he had a couple drivers before, and I wrecked. He called me several months after I gotten home and started recovering and said, listen, you get ready. Your car is mine. My car is yours. You'll be, and from this point forward, if you want to drive, I will only race if you drive, and you're done driving, I'm done racing. That's been 3.5 years now, and we're still going strong, and I'm still burning his checkbook up in my bill. He calls me every now and again to remind me, like, all right, bud, we need to dial the tune up a little bit. But by far the best thing for me was to get right back in. Was I nervous and was I scared? Yes, absolutely I was. We got to Darlington and I'm all strapped in and got my red headset in, and my dad comes on the radio. He's like, all right, bud, they're ready. All right, bud, they're ready. And I'm like, okay. He's like, everything okay? You good? I'm like, yeah, Dad, just give me a second. And I got up there and got it fired up, pulled the water box, and when I turned the tires over in the burnout box, I was good. Just right back where I should have been. So, like I was saying, I've told the story several different ways, and I've tried to help all forms and all ages and all the demographics, and if you don't take anything else away from it, it's that not to let something like this keep you from doing what you love. It's most of us in here we're eat up with it. It's like a drug, that you just cannot get enough of. You worry about making a house payment next month, but by God, we're gonna buy a drum of fuel before we go to the dirt track next week or whatever. It's just kind of how we are. But before you go buy that drum of fuel, as she was saying, once you go open your suit bag up, if you keep it in the bag, or open the cabinet in the trailer where it's hung up and take a look at it, because the next lap you make, whether it's a round or a straight one, could always be your last, and when you're strapping that thing, you can't think like that, but you got to prepare for the worst and always hope for the best. Would I change? If I could go back, obviously I wouldn't want to be burned up, but the good Lord left me here for a reason, and whether it was to come and talk to somebody in here today, or somebody I've already talked to, or somebody I'm gonna talk to, if I've saved one, I've done my job. We had the pleasure of having an 8-year-old kid from Minnesota, flew from Minnesota to Valdosta, Georgia, to spend, just a few weeks ago, we raced at this same race. So I won this one 2 years ago. We were back there just a couple weeks ago, and he had gotten burnt. He pulled a hot skillet off of the counter when he was young, and grease burned him up and right down his chest and down his back and his arm, and he was having a really tough time. Even wearing short sleeves in front of his friends. He was a hockey player, or is a hockey player, would hide in the corner to take his shirt off, because he was worried about what those kids, were going to say. Kids are mean, like in today's world, there's some mean kids out there that take a look at somebody like that and just keep prodding and poking, and and Blake Newman is his name, and he came and spent the week with us and got to help push the car and work on it, and we were there filming the Horsepower Wars TV show at the same time, and I was dragging him around all over the place, but before he left, we sat down in my trailer and I said, listen, Blake, your scars tell a story, and that story deserves to be told. You should never hide from them. In fact, I think you should show them off. you walk up to a kid at hockey practice next week and he's staring at your chest when you got your shirt off in the locker room, tell them what happened. Because they're just curious, you know. Now some of them are mean and some of them are going to poke and prod, but you know, it's not anything that kid should have to hide from. It's not something I've ever hid from, you know. And sometimes I wonder if I've handled it the right way, you know, if I went about my life in a normal way, you know, if that was the right way to do it. And so far I think so, you know, that I just took it in stride, you know. In the timeline of life, it was just a little blip. You know, you guys look at data lines, it's just a little hiccup in the drive shaft data or whatever. You know, it didn't nothing about it keeps me from doing what I love. Nothing about it keeps me from continuing my normal day-to-day life. You know, and I think a lot of that is in one, the support system I've got behind me, but two, there's a lot of attitude to do with that. You know, you can't dwell on it. You know, if there's anybody in here who's been injured in a race car before or knows somebody who has, you know, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You know, it's just something you just got to keep on. You know, keep on keeping on is the motto that I use throughout the majority of my recovery. You know, I had to put my pants on a little different there for a while. I couldn't quite button them like I normally did, but we figured that out. You know, and I'm still here today, and I couldn't thank the Lord, you know, more for leaving me here and being able to speak to you guys today. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. There are no limits. I will talk about any aspect of it. So if you do have a question, I'll be happy to answer it. Yep.
What do you wear now for a head sock? And obviously, a head sock still has open face to an extent.
Right.
I mean, there's just no preventative to that.
Right. So Simpson is the helmet I wear. I wear one of the Carbon Bandits.
Yep.
I've got Fresh Air. They have a thicker gasket that they can put around for the shield. I do wear a head sock, you know, and I wear the one with just the eye holes. And you're right, there is, and mine's also got the skirt that sits down on the chest, you know. So you're right, there is no way just to completely cover your face, but there are lots of things out there that are good enough to keep you, you know, as safe as long as you're suited in, right? You know, so, but I take all the safety measures now. You know, we are overdone and redone. So,
Do you think drag racing is I personally do because of the speeds.
Man,
Something goes and something bad.
I don't, and the reason I say that is there's only two of us out there at one time.
Yeah.
You know, and I've only got one other idiot to worry about. For you guys that maybe have ran, or let's just use Daytona as an example, there's 43 idiots out there. You know, maybe not all of them are idiots, but at least half of them probably are. And you're all running 200 plus miles an hour, and you're all banging and beating off each other. In my opinion, that is one of the more dangerous. I think, how many of you are sprint car drivers? Anybody like big wing sprint car or non-wing sprint car? Those guys are nuts too. You know, to think about, I'm headed down this straightaway at 160, and the next thing I'm gonna do is turn this thing sideways, and no.
We went to Kalamazoo Speedway.
Yep.
Okay? And it was the super sprints.
Yeah.
And I've never seen super sprints. They hurt my ears.
Yep.
Like, just the fastest race cars I've ever been. So they're doing their warm-ups for the final 50 lap. And out pulls this car, 50 feet, whatever it is. I watch over the wireless microphone. Hi, this is whatever. And this is Randy Sweet. Randy was a big stock manufacturer. He says, and this has been on Randy Sweet's bucket list. He's 76 years old and in bad health. I just said, but what? And actually, I know a waitress at the time who raced late models. I think she raced, and she said, "Oh, yeah, not wrestling race, which is pissed off." You know, thinking, how?
Yep.
First of all, thank God you're here. We appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to go buy some better gloves when we leave here. We're drag racers. Okay. And we both run on alcohol. And thank you for being here. Another thing I would say is one, don't let the rule book nor the track dictate what you do for safety.
That's exactly right.
Do it for your own family and your own life. Right. Because you can't replace it and you can't come back. You know, so I appreciate for preaching some common sense to us that we all need to pay attention.
Ryan and I talked about this last night at dinner. There's been this big push for these tracks to really crack down on their safety tech, you know, and I agree with that. But on the other side, there's people who can barely afford to pay the bills, that have just enough to go race, maybe can't quite afford to have their safety stuff up to snuff, but at the end of the day, those are the guys that keep the lights on at these local racetracks, so you start cracking down on the safety like that and you run those guys off, we're not gonna have a place to race. So self-policing is 100%. There needs to be a big sign coming in every gate, I think, at every racetrack is you need to self-police yourself for your safety. It shouldn't be up to the track, but in the world we live in today where people are so apt to just up and sue somebody, you kind of have to, because if I go there and get hurt, well, the track let me run with no helmet on, it's their fault, No, I don't think so at all. If you're dumb enough to go out there and go down the racetrack in whatever hot rod you've got without the right stuff on, that's your own fault. So self-policing, I think, is the way it should be done. These tracks talking about really cracking down on their safety. You're gonna run your weekend warriors off. And it's sad to say that you should let somebody go out there and run without the proper safety equipment, but at the same time, it's up to us. It shouldn't be up to the racetrack, in my opinion.
You gotta be accountable for your own.
Right. That's exactly.
I'm gonna tell you this, we're gonna find a video on YouTube. US 131 at home track.
Yep.
We're gonna invite some people and
So my dad and I did another one. It's super long. I had a guy come by and we really went over all the stuff that I had on and went over problems in the race car, which you guys as drag racers and anybody really, one of the huge problems in my car in particular was it was not a true firewall. It had a huge cutout in the center where the transmission, where the bell housing bolted to the back of the motor, that was just a carbon fiber Zeus end piece. Well, that's all fine and well until it's on fire, and that stuff turns into crumple. So having a true firewall, there is a good, if you can YouTube or whatever my name, and there's a video that says, I think Lyle Barnett, it's my dad and I, and we went over the whole deal, and there have been several that have had, a group meeting like this or a track meeting or whatever, and have played it, and it's been good for all involved.
What is the number?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Not quite, it's less than what mine was. We know it all the time.
Yeah, because it's basically less.
one thing we also see, like you said, on the streetcar outlaws, we're a fan, whatever.
Right.
You see so many open, there's nothing for a trained tunnel. And like you said, my 13-year-old granddaughter, which races, watches that.
Yep.
That's not me, and that will not be her. And
I preach that and preach that. Dave and I are really, Dave Comstocker, Daddy Dave, we're really good friends, and I just beat it, and he finally got you, and he's like, man, if this is what you're gonna do, just don't. And I'm like, look, man, he's got, they call him Daddy Dave for a reason, because he's got this booty kids. And I'm like, they still need you to come home at night. They still need Daddy at home, and your wife still needs her husband, and Melissa still needs her fiance and husband to be in just a few. Couldn't be long enough for me, couldn't be soon enough for her.
But you think about it, why do they have frontage and rails?
Right.
Don Garlis is one.
Those guys. Anybody else got any questions? Well, I appreciate you guys letting me speak to you today. I hope that at least, I know some of you, I hope all of you go buy new gloves or whatever it takes to upgrade your safety program, because you've got to be wearing the right stuff, guys. It's not, like I said, you'll go spend thousands of dollars to pick up a tent, but you won't go spend a couple hundred to give you a couple extra seconds in case that thing catches on fire. That mentality has to change.
And how many people do you know as a bracket racer cut the thumb off for the
I
training?
had the thumb cut off. You feel that button, right? I have since figured out how to go double O without it. You find the right button, find the right placement, you could still cut a light with your gloves on. And I would, the thumb wasn't cut out of the gloves I had on in that one. I just didn't have on enough glove, period. When they pulled that glove off, I was laying on the track, it took what was under it. I stepped on the racetrack when I got out of the car and it pulled my heel off my foot. Just another a 10. Anything else would have saved a lot of what I got. But they patched me back together, and we're still here. And I just, like I said, I want to thank all of you for sitting in here and listening today. I'm known to ramble, and I could. We could just, I'll dive right back in if y'all want to. If you want to leave, you can leave. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not I can keep you
Oh,
long.
it's a bunch of races.
Right.
They're all there.
I pull up all kinds of videos. We go back to the glory days. It's awesome. But no, I really do appreciate it. You guys are an attentive group, and I hope you took something from it. Like if you want to, like you said, the Netflix show Fastest Car, we were on season 2 of that. Horsepower Wars, the $10,000 drag shootout. We won the first season and just running it up in the second. So we've got some YouTube stuff and whatnot going on. I've got Instagram and Facebook, and I keep that updated as far as what we're doing and where we're racing. We come out this way some to no prep race with our little beer money Mustang. So if we're out and about and we're somewhere near you, come find us. I'd be happy to see you and hang out and drink a beer and race a little bit. So I appreciate it. Thank you.